Hi, this is Russ with DevotedGolfer.tv. It's the 2016 PGA Merchandise Show. I'm here with Justin Kleinert. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
And Justin is you're on the metalwoods side of the TaylorMade business.
Correct.
And it's my understanding that this right here, this 10-gram carbon fiber crown, is your baby.
Yes. So I think the best way to describe it is we do a lot of research and development. We put a lot of emphasis on creating the best titanium drivers that we can and evaluating that over time. And we got to the point where we were so thin that we couldn't go any further on titanium, and that's where the carbon fiber comes into play. So we started to figure out how do we, create the carbon fiber, how do we match it, how are we going to connect it to the head, how is it going to be durable, then we got to worry about sound. There's a bunch of pieces to the puzzle of getting that mass savings and actually utilizing it in the head.
And so we've taken this, which says on the back of 10 grams, and we reduced from, what was the titanium head, the lightest titanium head you had?
So if you cut that same exact shape out of an R15, which is last year's product, that's a 22-gram piece.
Okay, so you took 12 grams from the crown, and you put it down into the sole of the club.
Yeah. So
Where'd it go?
where'd it go? So
I can tell you where some of it went, because my recollection of the R15 is that it was actually a couple grams heavier. So now we're at around 204 and a half, right?
Correct. That's
Yeah.
correct.
And very consistent 204 and a half.
That is always the goal.
Yeah. Everyone I see, I come in, I wait, I'm like, it's 204 and a half. Yeah. Great job.
It's not just me. There's a huge team that we all work together, and everyone has their certain expertise, and that's really why you get such a well-designed product at the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay. And so M1, I've been fitting with M1s now for a couple months. Tell us a little bit about where you put the weight and actually what these adjustment screws do for the average golfer on the M1.
So I think the big thing was we wanted to add more adjustability in more ways. So you have the 15-gram weight in the front track. And what that does is from draw to fade, in our player testing, we were seeing over 20 yards of difference. So you're able
I can move the ball 20 yards. I can move the window 20 yards.
You can move your window.
Yeah.
So, and then the weight in the back, which is 10 grams, you're able to move it from low, which is that low forward position, to the back, which is the forgiveness position.
Yeah.
And that does about 300 RPM of spin or 0.8 degrees of launch. So you're able to...
So in addition to adjusting my launch here on the hosel, right, I can adjust my spin and my launch by moving this weight forward and backward.
Correct.
So I'm looking at about a degree. Is that what you said, 0.8? Yeah. And a couple hundred RPMs. Yeah.
So, I mean, the goal is, so you're adjusting loft here, but sometimes that loft adjustment is a big step. Well, this is a refinement in those in-between spots.
Okay. Yeah. So if I want to go from, if I want to move it just a little bit, I'm going to tweak it in over here. But I'm also adding some forgiveness as I pull it back.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And so here's the crown, and we've taken, what, 12 grams or so? And we moved it down into the structure of the club.
So the overall, you can see here how we connect it to the crown and all the mechanisms. So the total savings that we're able to move directly to the sole is about 5 or 6 grams. So that 5 or 6 grams is where you get all that extra personalization in M1. And that's what we're trying to do, that low center of gravity that's giving you the good ball speed and the good spin, and then giving you the personalization to be able to find that right spot for you.
Yeah, I like that word personalization, because we're going to come back to that when we talk about the M2, right? And so we can see the back of the head right here. Let's talk a little bit about head technology, because that's one of TaylorMade's great points is how you design this head, and tell us what that head design delivers to the golfer.
So there's a few aspects. You can see that this is our inverted cone technology, which is actually a variable thickness across the face. What that does is help spread your forgiveness and your COR area. So COR is your coefficient of restitution.
Right. Yeah.
It's what gives you ball speed on that strike. So you vary your thicknesses, so you're getting your flexibility where you want it, so you're able to get more flexibility on off-center hits, which is more ball speed, which is that ball speed protection.
And so we have the same personalization on the M1 with the movable weights. And this year we have 2 weights instead of 1. What prompted that?
So I think the big thing is on the fairway, you have the fade, the draw, but then you also now have a higher inertia setting where you can move those weights to the heel and the toe.
Yeah.
So you're getting an extra setting and being able to move multiple weights around.
Yeah.
And you're able to do that because of that same carbon crown savings.
Yeah. So if I want to make this a little more forgiving, I take those weights and I spread them all the way out. And that would be the same as pulling that weight on the M1 all the way back. It's doing the same thing, but it's doing it in a slightly different way.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the M1 hybrid. Haven't fit with this a lot. Give me some.
The thing about the M1 hybrid is it's a more player-shaped hybrid.
Okay.
So what we're doing here is it's more of a centered, neutral CG location.
Mhm.
So it's not going to give you a draw bias, which is typical in your hybrid.
Right.
And for those better players, that's not something that they typically want to look for.
Yeah.
So that's why we have these movable weights here. So you can see that there's 25 grams in the center of the head.
Yeah.
That's right behind the center of the face. So if you want to get a little bit more fade biased even, you can switch those weights, which goes back to the personalization. You see
Yeah.
it in the driver, you see it
Yeah.
in the fairway, you also see it in the hybrid.
And so we still have a little bit of a speed pocket in here too, don't we?
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's just in the same way you want to protect on your low phase shots, reduce spin, protect ball speed.
Yeah. Okay. So the new story here, it's just being released now at the show, is the M2,
Correct.
right? And I recall from my days with Adams that what we've taken is we've got this slot right up close to the head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think there's two things that we tried to do with the M2 driver. It's forgiveness
Mm-hmm.
and a hot trajectory. Now
Mhm.
there's multiple ways that we get each of those things, and that speed pocket that you touched on helps in both of those.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about forgiveness, the first step to that forgiveness is taking that savings that we talked about from the crown and moving it all the way to the back of the head.
Okay.
So
Back in here.
Yep,
Yeah.
what that does is creates that low back CG.
Mhm.
So I think the important thing to know is we've gone so low now with that carbon crown that we're able to start to pull it back.
Mhm.
So that's where it's exciting with M2 that we're able to start exploring that space.
Mhm.
With that back CG, you get the high MOI, which is the stability of the head
Right.
at impact, which is what gives you your ball speed protection.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not only giving you ball speed protection that way, we're also giving it through the speed pocket.
Yeah.
So that speed pocket also helps to spread that COR and that ball speed protection. It's going to
Mhm.
help pull back down. And then the last piece is that inverted cone that I talked about on the back of the M1 driver.
Right.
There's also a inverted cone on the back of the M2 driver that's a little bit more aggressive to give you a little bit more ball speed protection.
So you've refined the design of the inverted cone on the M2, making it even more forgiving than it is on the M1.
Well, and I think that's a good way to look at it, but we tried to make sure that the inverted cone that we have in each of the drivers matches what we're trying to get performance-wise from those drivers. So M2's inverted cone is very specific for M2,
Mhm.
and M1's inverted cone is very specific for M1. So it's as we go through the process of trying to get the specific performance characteristics for each of those drivers that
Mhm.
we look at redesigning that.
And so we were looking at the M2 iron earlier, and we saw this little pocket in it, and I
Mhm.
see exactly that same little pocket here in this fairway cutaway.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see what we're talking about right in here. This is hollow, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And here's our speeds pocket, so we're not only getting a collapse on the face, we're getting some assistance from a little bit weaker sole, if you
Mhm.
would.
So that's what I talk about when I talk about forgiveness from our speed pocket. So it's
Mhm.
actually being able to pull the flexibility down,
Mhm.
so you're getting more flex on the bottom of the face, which helps that ball speed preservation.
So if I thin it,
If you're going to hit it low, you're still going to get that ball speed that you're seeing in other positions on the head.
yeah.
Okay. I think the one last thing that's important about the M2 driver is the aerodynamics. So you can see the transition from the face to the crown
Mhm.
is very smooth. So what that does is it keeps the flow of air attached to the crown and all the speed generating portions of your swing. So that high peak point allows that air to flow over, stay attached, and
Yeah.
reduce drag. But the carbon crown allows you to have that high point without the penalty of having titanium and weight high.
Interesting. Yeah. So there's So there's some aerodynamic technology built into here, which you've always had,
Mm-hmm.
and but run me through that again. How has the carbon fiber changed the aerodynamics that you've used in the past?
So I think the big thing is as you get up to that high peak point,
Yeah.
so you're moving all that crown up top to up top.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's titanium up there, that's heavier mass that's up there.
Okay.
So you're able to have that high peak point
So so I get it. So,
without
you've
having
got a higher peak point,
without having the penalty of having that metal.
having pushed the mass way up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that, the aerodynamics, the speed pocket, and that low projection point from that CG being so
Yeah,
down far is
yeah.
what gives you that really hot trajectory.
Mhm.
And so you're going to get your distance, but you're also going to get that forgiveness.
Yeah. And you've kept, unlike last year's aero burner, this year we're having an adjustable hosel in here, so we can do a little bit of launch tweaking if we want to.
Correct. And I think the big thing for me that I was excited about is, so last year, AirBurner and R15, they weren't using the same shafts as far as fitting goes, whereas M1 and M2, so they're built using the same cut shaft length. What that means is M1 at 45 and a half and M2 at 45 3/4. The difference in that length is actually from the head. So if you take a shaft out of M1 and put it into M2, it builds the correct length. So if you take it out of M2 and put it in M1, it builds the correct length.
Okay, well, that's good to know from a fitting perspective, because I can now put these into the fitting card and move back and forth. Interesting. I'm looking at this cutaway, and I'm seeing space behind the face, and I'm seeing the speed pocket sitting right up there next to it.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited about the M2 fairway this year. TaylorMade has been doing speed pockets for a few generations, and we pushed it as close as we could get to the face. It's our most flexible speed pocket ever. So what that means is, on low phase shots, you're going to get ball speed protection. On center phase shots and low phase shots, you're going to get spin reduction. And both of those things give distance.
How about launch? Is this affecting launch at all, having this much flexibility low in the face?
Similarly, as the M2 irons, the speed pockets do affect launch, so it's going to be one of those products that's easier to get into the air.
So I'm going to get a little more launch, a little more spin, and I'm actually going to be able to fire fairways at greens, because I'm going to get a little more drop and stop performance.
I mean, I think that what you're going to get out of this is just pure distance. It's going to go, and that's because of that ball speed protection and the spin reduction.
Okay. And again, I just noticed this. You've done the same thing that you've done on the irons. That what do we call this?
The
We call
fluted
this-
hosel.
What do you call it?
Fluted
A
hosel.
fluted hosel. So you've taken additional weight out of the hosel and you've repositioned it into the head.
And I think it's a similar story when we talk about badges on the M2 iron. On TaylorMade's M2 fairway, what happens is the more flexible you get in your speed pocket, the more sound impact you have. So what we do is we increase the length of that hosel to give you that good, crisp feel and sound that you want to get from your fairway, and still have the flexibility of the speed pocket. What that does is you're moving all of that hosel weight high up, which that's not where you want any of your mass. So you take that fluted hosel, the mass out, and put it back down low. So it's one of those things that we shared back and forth between the irons and the fairways and the rescues.
And so, as you said, you shared it in the rescues. There it is again, showing up once again. And speed pocket, very, very low, very, very forward.
Yep. The same speed pocket design that we applied to the fairway, we applied to the rescue to give that same performance benefit. And as well, whereas the M1 rescue was a neutral to a fade bias, the M2 complements that and gives you a draw bias.
Okay. So, Justin, thanks for spending your time with us.
Thank you.
Great to hear the story from one of the guys that actually participates in the designs. I know you're pretty proud of this.
I'm super, super proud. And I think what we've done between M1 and M2, M1 across the entire line is all about personalization and distance,
Yeah.
and M2 is all about forgiveness and distance, and you're going to be able to decide what makes sense for you based on your distance.
Okay, well, thank you. And for our watchers at devotedgolfer.tv, thanks for spending your time with us.